Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. This is Marziti here with the Bullish Bears, and we are going to do a summary, a quick look at the markets, and maybe see if we can find something to trade today. Um, and let's just kind of start down here. I'm starting on the daily. Signet does his market overview. He does look into a few particular tickers. The difference between my stream and Signet is looking at the overall market, and then he may have a few choice tickers that he looks at. My purpose in doing my stream is to figure out what am I going to trade today. And so they're complementary. We cover different topics. We look at it from different angles and things like that. So they both, in my opinion, have value. You know what? That's probably coming through. I don't think you guys on Discord can hear it, but I'm sure the YouTube folks can hear all that book map mess coming through. So let me turn that off there. Okay. All right. So let's get on with it here. One of the things that we kind of we want to look at a lot of the different markets, but at the same time, we're looking for patterns, and we always start on the higher time frame. Let's just simply start with the daily on everything. Starting here with crude, I'm just simply going alphabetical through it. Crude oil, we kind of see that we went down, we went up. So we had this low, we had this high, we had this 50% retracement. Crude is now sitting at this junction. If this were just pure ICT trading strategy, we'd say low, high, 50%, go back high. But we know that that's not always the case, and so we kind of look at this. What this is telling me, though, is that being on the daily level now, and there's a lot of good trades that are counter trend to the daily, but we still want to know the daily trend, whether we go up or down. But what this is telling me is we are at a decision point on the daily because we're back at around 50%, and let's just zoom into that so you guys can see it. So we see that we've got this 50% move back. DeMark puts us at a 5. So remember, the DeMark is simply a stepping thing. It's sort of like it counts up to 13 steps, and in either direction, and then it says it's time to pull back, or if it's going down, to step back up a little bit. And as Kevin talks about, the accumulation, the manipulation, and the distribution. So here, this would have been our accumulation. I don't know where you'd call your manipulation. Maybe this was the manipulation here, and then we start to see that distribution going on here as we start profit taking and setting up for the next move. So again, that's on the daily. We're at a decision point here on crude. Now the ES looks quite different, and it's looked like this for several days. Remember, folks, you're more than welcome to throw a question into the Discord or to hop in on voice if you have a question about what's going on. But let's just take a look at what's going on here on the ES. We've got a few decent sized candles here and here, but a lot of these, and Signet pointed this out this morning, that if we look at the ranges, go away. There it is. Right above my cursor, you'll see that's R colon, and that is the range on the daily candles. We traditionally, if we look back up at that R, see 138. We traditionally would see 70 to 100 daily range. Here, we're seeing, if we just kind of look up, 30s, 40s, and 50s. Well, what does that kind of tell us? Well, that means that we're getting tighter. We're getting very much tighter, getting ready for a bigger move. So we are still on the ES in a holding pattern. So What else can that tell us? Well, we'll look at more about that when we get to the pivot points and so on. But remember, we have JOLTS report today. And as I've talked about before, and we're going to go look at that in just a minute. So I'll save that discussion for just a minute here. Let's go look at gold. Gold is, it's come up. Notice this pattern here. We go up, we pull back, we go up, we pull back. Now, does that mean necessarily that we're going bullish again? Well, no, but it does kind of give us a trend line to consider. So if I go from here to here, I see a trend here, and maybe from here to here, and there is your daily trend line perhaps to consider. We could maybe, let's do that. Let's move that point here. Okay. So there's you a trend line. Now, if you believe that we're going to continue this step up, then sure, we should come back to at least the 50% level, which would put us somewhere around 2692-ish, with your stop below this existing candle, as far as a daily, especially if you're doing options or something like that. So we do have something to look at there. Let's go down here and let's look at, now the NASDAQ kind of has that same stepping pattern as the ES. The NASDAQ is triggering a 9 on the DeMark, indicating that it is getting time for a reversal. That doesn't mean it has to happen today or tomorrow. Certainly, as we can see looking at, here we are back looking at the ES. The ES triggered that 9 DeMark, but it's starting to, looks like it's starting, maybe getting ready to roll over. So a 9 on the DeMark does not necessarily imply, and sometimes that fails, like every other strategy, that does fail. But it is giving us an indication that it's time to start looking for some pullback in the market. All right. We've also talked about the SPY gap. We talked about that specifically yesterday. I did trade that SPY gap. It did go pretty well. I traded it with an option, actually. I just simply bought a put, bought a call. I think we were below the SPY close, so I bought a call, whatever it was. And, it wasn't that big, but still it was a nice trade. You can trade it with the futures, of course. Just depends on your strategy and all that. Looking at the sum total of the markets. And again, as I point out every day, this has, go away, stupid thing. You know what, let me just pin it and that'll push everything down. There we go. ES, NASDAQ, Russell, VIX, dollar, and then of course all your bonds. And you can throw that into, if you have the data for it, you can throw that into TradingView, different format, but the way you enter it. But again, the main thing we're looking at, notice this looks a lot like the ES, quite frankly. It looks very much. We've triggered that same 9 DeMark here, and it looks like, we're starting to slow down, maybe getting ready for a rollover. Okay. So let's go ahead and move down into the hourly, because now we're going to start looking for where are we going to start looking for our trades. Let's see. All right. And I've got to make sure to wrap up by 9 o'clock. I've got an appointment here this morning. I will not be in the live stream this morning with Jeremy. But at any rate, all right. So again, let's take a look here. Crude. We went up, we took back, we kind of went into this sideways action here on the last couple hours. We had this significant breakdown. So if we look at this high, we look at this low, we did come pretty much back. So we had a high, we had a low, we had a run back up. But the question is, did we get back to at least a 50%? And the answer is no, but we don't always have to get back to a 50%. it's just cleaner if we do. We do look like we've got this rally base drop going on right here. This could be a continuation down. We've got to wait for this candle to close and then see which way it's going to break from there. On the hourly, ADRs are wider, pivot points are wider, IV is up. What is that kind of telling us? We've already moved 90% of the ADR today. So, ADR is this dashed line here. So we opened here, we've already hit that. We've hit a pivot point, a support line down here. We've actually hit two support lines, pivots, 1 and 2, plus half of the ADR. To be quite honest, I don't see us getting above the pivot point of 68.39, but I'm kind of leaning bearish on crude. Now the ES is a different exception. While we are, notice this tight choppiness here on the ES. I want you to also to notice, let me get right here, and I want to draw the opening balance and the Asian session right there. With one little tick, roughly, or whatever, we're still inside the Asian session. Now, one of the things that we'll see on the correlations with Edgeful is that there is a correlation between how the Asian session ends and how the ES ends at end of day, end of market. So what I've highlighted here is the initial balance, which is this first hour, plus the Asian session. Obviously, we see that the initial balance, which was just this candle right here, and we did break, so the initial balance did break high. But the Asian session and the initial balance, we're still inside that zone. So why is that? Why haven't we started moving? We're in the London session right now, so why have we not started moving? And that is the jobs report still, which we will come back to as we start talking about events. Let's take a look at gold. Gold, on the other hand, as we can see, is just in a slow move up. We obviously have hit half of the ADR. It's moved 75% of its ADR for the day. Its pivot points are wider. When pivot points are wider, we do not expect wild, strong breakouts. That's not to say they don't happen, but we don't expect them. We do see that the IV is down. So what are we seeing right now in the hourly is just a slow grind up. Where could we be going with this? Well, our first target here, there's a resistance, a pivot point resistance is right here, but more than likely we're going for the high of this candle here, very possibly at 2682.4. But I would be really targeting, because this was yesterday's high. If we're going to continue this grind up, yesterday's high here, if we look, turn our eyes up there to the data line, we see 2687.7. So that would be our most significant high, which happens to be also up here at a full ADR move, 2688.8. That is the more probable. Now notice that we did cross the pivot point, so but so I do think more than likely we're going to get up into this area around here, probably closer around to this high right here, take liquidity, and then I suspect we'll probably start to see a little pullback there as we start to see a little bit of a sell-off. It may continue on north, but at some point we're going to be looking for some distribution there. The NASDAQ looking very much just like the ES. Again, let's kind of do that Let's do, oops, go away. Let's do that same initial balance and Asian session starting here. We've got our high coming up to 2 a.m., which actually is 1 a.m. I probably marked the other one wrong. You got to remember that 1 a.m., that means the candle started at 1 a.m., closed at 2 a.m. So we don't go to the 2 a.m. candle because that's 2 to 3. So again, we're still inside of that Asian session, and the Asian session itself, which opened right here, closed barely bullish. Okay. Looking at the SPY real quick, also, if we're thinking about doing that SPY gap fill, this yellow line, I've already pre-marked it. Well, doesn't look right at all. Where did the SPY close yesterday? It would have been, thought I'd marked it, is this line right here. So where did this guy close? Let me fix that line. Thought I had that marked. Right there. Anyway, as you can see, we're very close. We're within about 50 cents of that close. Now, is there a trade here? No, not yet. There is no trade here yet until after the JOLTS report. So what are we going to trade today? Well, we don't know. I'll say this. The JOLTS report is going to hit the ES. It's going to hit the NQ. And, of course, if it hits the ES, it's going to also hit the SPY. Why? Well, remember that the ES, the SPY, those two plus XSP are based on the SPX. The SPX is the one from which all the others are derived. Just like there's an NDX for the NASDAQ from which the NQs and the QQQ is derived. So we've got to remember that all these things here are going to wait for that JOLTS report. We're going to come back. We're going to look at that in just a moment. And so there is no trade plan so much on any of on the ES, NASDAQ, or the SPY until that report hits. Now the problem with that, of course, is that that kind of punts us over to crude or gold if we want to try to trade the pre-market. The pre-market, now I actually traded gold this morning and did good with that on the pre-market. But at this point, we've got to wait until we see what happens with that JOLTS report. All right, let's move on. I keep talking about it, so let's get on over to it. And let's just take a look at that, and then we'll go over to Edgeful and take a look at their statistics as well. All right, 9:45. We do see the red book here at 8:55, which is coming up. The red book is a report on how retail sales are doing year over year. If that were the only report going on today, it would have a higher significance. But I believe it's going to take a back seat to JOLTS. Now, why is this S&P Manufacturing PMI final? They've got it red. I will tell you it's not as important for two reasons. Number one, unless, notice this is the final, because they put out the flash, and that's the one the markets really react to, the preliminary report. The final, unless it deviates heavily from their initial report or flash or whatever you want to call it, unless it deviates heavily from it, then there's not going to be any reaction necessarily to the final, because we've already been told what it is with their preliminary, their initial findings. So only if it deviates dramatically will that cause anything. The big one here is the jobs. Signet talked about the fact that the feds are believing that inflation is no longer the big topic, that it's going to be, where people are looking at jobs. JOLTS, and, Signet also talks about jobs is this take this job and shove it. It talks about how many other open how many open jobs there are out there that companies want to fill. And so when that number is high, that means there's lots of changing job or first-time employment or whatever kind of jobs out there overall, that for people wanting to either change jobs or get a job, that just tells them if JOLTS is high, then people know there are good jobs out there, or jobs in general. I won't say they're good, but there are jobs. So, so JOLTS is the biggie that we're looking for today. For multiple reasons. And so let's talk about the significance of that. Remember, as I've talked about before, institutions have a plan. You've got your JP Morgans, you've got your Chase, you've got your whomevers, these big institutions that are going to throw the money around to take their positions in the markets. Now, obviously, they're competitors, so they do not share their plans with one another on what kind of move they're going to make, bearish, bullish, or whatever. But they do sort of all have an understanding on when they're going to launch their plan. And so what we will typically see is that, like on a day like today where JOLTS is it, most likely is that they're all going to kick their plan into action when JOLTS report hits at 10 o'clock. Now, if coincidentally, like I said, they don't share it because they're competitors, if coincidentally they're all on the same side, bearish or bullish, then the market's just going to take off in that direction because all the big institutions are throwing their money that way. And so if they're all bullish, then you just see green candles just take off, take off, take off, take off, take off. But if they disagree, some say bullish, some say bearish, well, that's when we see these candles just wick up, wick down, wick up, wick down. They whip back and forth, and many times they come right back to the middle of where everything started. So we don't know that outcome. So that's when I tell everybody, and all the moderators will tell you, when these reports come out, get out of the way. Do not be in a trade within 4 or 5 minutes of these reports coming out. Look to start, and you say, well, I can put a stop in. When these reports come out, they can blow, your stop will get triggered, but you may not get filled anywhere near where your stop is, because you got to remember, you are getting in line with a stop, because a stop is a market order. So you can still get, your stop may be triggered, but where you get filled when that chaos hits, well, that could be, anywhere. So that's why we tell people, get out of the way of this when this report happens. All right, now, let's pop on over to Edgeful and see what we've got over there. We do see, we're going to start by looking at the gap fill on the SPY. Now, normally, right now we won't know the actual gap up on the SPY until now. I'm Eastern time, market's open for me at 9:30, so I'm going to refer to Eastern time. We're going to ultimately look at that gap at, like 9:25. Right before the market opens, we're going to start paying attention to that gap. Today is a little bit of an exception because of the JOLTS report, which takes precedence over historical statistics. But if it is that when the SPY opens at 9:30, we're going to look at the close on yesterday, whatever yesterday's SPY close was at 4 o'clock. We're going to look at where we opened today, And as you can see, we've got a 70% chance based on the last 6 months of data that this will fill that gap within the amount of time, or 100% rather, excuse me, on a Tuesday. And if we look at the fill time, we see that at 70% of the time fills within 1.5 hours. Now that's a long time to hold a trade. Let's just kind of see maybe about going to the first 30 minutes. So between 9:30 and 10. All right, we only see a 35% chance that it happens there. So this is definitely going to be a longer play, but on the gap, if it's a gap up, if it's a gap down, 46 minutes. So this is definitely a longer play today on that. So remember that Edgeful is a company that what they do is they build they simply have a humongous database of what price is done on futures, stocks, and so forth, and they generate dozens of reports on and give us statistics. So let's move on. Statistics are cool because when you have statistics, it can give you an insight of where it's leaning. Now, we never use statistics 100% for our plan unless that is your plan. And there are people, the Edgeful people do their own morning stream just like we do here. And, it seems that they do using their statistics and from this angle, from that angle, and so forth to build the narrative of which way they want to trade. That's a strategy, and that's fine, and that works. All right, so let's go back here. We'll look at the futures. Let's make sure we're on the ES. Let's talk about the orb. So remember, the opening range breakout is what do we expect to happen within the first 15 minutes. Again, I stress that the JOLTS report may push this market around pretty heavily today. We'll just have to see what happens. Let's look at today, Tuesday. And in general, we are looking at the 15-minute orb. So we're going to take the highest high, the lowest low within the first 15 minutes, so from 9:30 to 9:45. And we're going to say from 9:45 and after, what happens? We have a 65% chance of a double break, meaning it will, so we set that high and that low from 9:30 to 9:45, so we have a 65% chance that it'll go higher than that and also go lower than that. Now, if it were to go higher, let's go or lower, we can take a look at percentages, and basically, if it breaks out above, it's going to go 0.26 on average over. Now you say, whoa, how do I figure that out? All right, the way we're going to figure that out, I'm just going to use some very simple numbers here just as an example. Let's say that the high was 5,300. Within the orb, the high was 5,300. What we're going to do is simply take that, multiply it times 1.0020. There's two zeros there because this is a less than 1%, 26. And they would be showing that if we started at 5,300, that the expected high is going to be around 5,314. Okay? If it, let's say the low, let's say that the low was 5,200, then I'm going to multiply it times, now this is a little bit more tricky, open parentheses, 1 minus 0.0044, close parentheses, enter, 5177. So you have to do the formula a little bit different if you're going up or if you're going down. So like I say, this is going to be, as usual, this is going to be recorded and tossed up on YouTube. I'll post the link. You guys can watch that and see. All right. So that gives you some ideas of what we can expect. We expect a double breakout, most likely today, of the orb. And we see, though, the breakout does seem to favor a longer run to the downside. Now, of course, there are maximum statistics, but on the left are our averages. Okay. Let me check my notes here and see, is there anything else I'm missing? Oh, yes, the Asian correlation. Now, where is it? Market session correlation. And we want Tokyo and New York. Over the last 6 months. Now, Asia finished just slightly green. It was green, but it was slightly green. Over the last 6 months, if Tokyo, Asia, has finished green, then New York has finished 66%. Now, that's not that much of a statistic. Well, it is a statistical edge. Most people like to see the number 70%, but it's a little bit short of that. But again, today we're waiting on JOLTS. JOLTS is going to take priority over everything. But the advantage is that when we look at a site like Edgeful, that it does kind of give us some idea of what's going on, and of what we can look for. Now, if JOLTS turns around and comes right back to the middle, it goes up, it goes down, and then it comes right back to the middle, then I think the Edgeful statistics are going to give us, lean us a little bit better. On the other hand, if the JOLTS report and the market takes off in one direction or another, then we can toss Edgeful out for today. But again, we're expecting a big report. So again, your technical analysis, your price action is going to take precedence. These things, these tools here give you an edge. But remember, even if this said it was 90% chance, there's still a 10% chance that it's not going to do what we expect it to do. So, just always, we look at the chart and we see what the chart is telling us. All right. So, let's see, what else have we got this morning to talk about as we go back to our charts. Like I say, just sit back, wait for JOLTS to happen. We see that, again, JOLTS is hitting at 10 o'clock. So what can we expect to happen between now and 10 o'clock? On the ES and the SPY and the NQ, one of two things will happen. Either one, it will just stay in this very, very tight range because nobody wants to breathe until that report comes out. Or two, that you may see the market start to move into a position. In other words, if you start seeing the markets trending up, slowly trending up as we get closer to 10 o'clock, and they're kind of starting to trend, a lot of times that means they're planning on a move in the opposite direction. There's no guarantee of that. Don't trade that necessarily. Again, I'm going to tell you, don't trade JOLTS. But, stay out of its way. It'll run right over you. But, you can kind of watch that to get that sentiment of what do you think may be happening, because a lot of times the market makers are going to move into a position where they want to maximize their profit. And so if you start to see the markets go up slowly, then jolts hits, it'll slam, there's one or two market makers that plan to try and slam it down. Or the opposite, if you see the market pushing down, 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 that's because they expect to make it rally. But again, don't trade it. Wait, just watch and see what happens. Okay, with that, so that right now leaves us with gold, and it leaves us with crude. And right now, crude, I got a feeling we're going to break south, and I think we're going down to this full ADR. And gold just creeping up slowly but slowly. So I'm going to put I'd probably put my trades right now into crude until after jolts happens. So at any rate, there we go with the morning report, and I hope you guys have a good day on that, and that gives you something to kind of see. Let me just want to bring over here, again, like I say, we are the bullish bears, and just kind of showing a little bit about us. I am showing the good folks over at Edgeful there that we are, in fact, actually talking about their product. They give us a comp account. Obviously, they'd like you to come look at their product, and if you think it's of some value to you, perhaps subscribe to it. I am not telling anyone to do it. We are not affiliated through affiliate links or anything like that, so there's no profit in us for us if you're interested in it, but you can certainly go check them out. At any rate, with that, I hope everybody has a good trading day, and I'll pop in this afternoon and we'll see what happens. So y'all have a good afternoon, good morning, and remember, if you can't be good, at least be good at it.